VSO Baginan forms part of VSO International's network of organizations that fights poverty on a global scale. VSO Baginan harnesses the power of skilled and dedicated people to bring about progress and fight poverty and bring about change in developing countries. VSO Baginan works with people and organizations so that they're able to engage volunteers, bring about capacity building programs, and engage with communities to contribute meaningfully and arrive at practical solutions in fighting poverty. One of the programs that VSO does in the Philippines is supporting the peace process in the southern Philippines. Peter Sheridan, a member of the Order of the British Empire, is our next eminent volunteer.
I'm here for two reasons. One is to share some of the experiences that I had, particularly in policing, in the introduction of the peace agreement in 1998. But secondly, to learn from the peace process here, because whilst we have made a considerable journey in our peace process, it's not yet at an end.
Peter, this time in an innovative manner, works in counterpart with a national eminent Filipino volunteer in the person of retired General Carlos Charlie Holganza. General Holganza is a former commanding general of the National Defense Support Command, or NADESCOM, of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP.
When we had the Framework Peace Agreement last month, it was very clear to us that we had mixed emotions, ranging from the far end. We had optimistic, cautious optimism, and then on the other end we had apprehension, we had cynicism. We had some people also were professing that it was bound to fail. And so it was very clear that, alam niyo po, kinakailangan po talaga natin, we need to start, promoting more awareness to the peace process, so that we'll have more commitment, so that we can have a snowball effect for the Framework Peace Agreement.
I was 32 years a police officer. I joined the police service in 1976. And at the time that I joined, the police service in Northern Ireland was made up of 95% Protestant and 5% Catholic. The population in Northern Ireland is 55% Protestant and 45% Catholic. So you can see that Catholic people didn't lend their support to the police service. So I joined the police service, which was rather unusual. And that made me a target for both sides, for people in my own community who would have viewed me as a traitor.
Kaya kami napunta dito sa Cotabato ay dahil meron tayong eminent volunteers. Ito ay mga pambihirang volunteers na may sariling expertise, may sariling kaalaman at eksperyensya sa pagpapatupad at pagpapalawak ng kapayapaan.
Well, I'm not sure I would call it expertise, but I have some experiences, and Northern Ireland was a very complex conflict. It was a complex agreement. The Philippines is complex. They may not necessarily be the same, but there are similarities and there are principles in terms of peaceful dialogue. And so I'm going to share my experience of Northern Ireland, and people here can take what they wish from that. It may be helpful, and some people may feel it's not helpful. Well, I think the similarities are in a divided society. And how do you move from a divided society where we kill each other, where you can look to the next generation to have a peaceful society, and where we commit ourselves to exclusively democratic and peaceful means to resolve our differences. I think those are similar. I think there are similarities in terms of the minority community and how the minority community engages post the agreement. There are similarities in terms of the need for human rights standards in policing and protection of people's rights.
Peter and Charlie also had a roundtable discussion with representatives of a leading Moro youth organization known as UNIPAD. This took place in the Al Noor Convention Center in Cotabato City. And this was where our volunteers were really amazed at the depth of knowledge and enthusiasm of the future Bangsamoro, in that these young people really asked details about how the transition phase and normalization would actually affect, and they in turn how they could influence that process.
We are all Bangsamoro youth. We call ourselves as Bangsamoro youth. And we are all sons and daughters of combatants. And we grew up all in the evacuation centers. Hindi pa kami nakaranas ng kapayapaan ever since.
And the best way to honour people who died during the conflict was to create a new beginning, so that never again would people lose their lives because of the conflict. And once the agreement happens with us in Northern Ireland, it required a commitment to exclusively democratic and peaceful means of resolving our differences.
In the case of women, how does the women participate in Palestine? Because in the case there are also women who are also combatants. So is it the same in the Northern Ireland?
Well, again, if it was females who had, women who had a conviction or a record, they didn't get into the police service. But they became engaged in other work in terms of peace building. But women are treated exactly the same as men. They have the same opportunities, they have the same skills. The second most senior police officer in Northern Ireland is a female. What you find about females or women, sometimes they're less likely to be violent, and then in the circumstances they can actually make a change simply by the way they approach things.
Because one of the things which we would like to impress on you is that it's not just, being in the military service that is going to be the answer to our warriors. We will have to come up with livelihood training for them. The important thing is everybody is gainfully employed. One thing good about what we have right now is that we have a lot of goodwill already. There are already a lot of countries who are willing to provide funds for development.
There are marginalised and deprived communities in Northern Ireland, not to the extent that I saw poverty here, but there are, and there needs to be a peace dividend. Unfortunately, in Northern Ireland, when the peace agreement was made, there was, the plan was to bring jobs into marginalised communities and deprived communities, but then the worldwide recession happened, and that impacted on it. A successful peace process requires a successful economy and a thriving economy. A successful, thriving economy requires a successful peace process. So they too go hand in glove.
What would be the scenario that will convince these groups, the intergroups, that hey, it works and you might as well be part of it?
So just because people aren't in it at the beginning doesn't mean that they won't come to the table later when they start to see, because it is that cynicism, it is that sceptical feel about it, but when people start to see that actually this is working, other people come later to the table and come later in the day.
The peace building we're talking about here targets only the Muslim minority, or does it also target the communist rebels?
The Ireland solution is not it's just a sample from which we can take lessons from. No? Because definitely we have a lot of, it's a lot different here. No? We have the eminent issue, for instance. No? But definitely, it is going to, it's a way forward to lessen whatever violence that we have right now. Imagine, no? If we have the MILF, or a big part of the MILF, go back to the faults of the law. In their time, in their area, there were also splinter groups. Same thing with us, we have splinter groups. But at least if you have a bigger portion now, with us, then that's going to, somehow provide us more advantages to move forward.
Post the peace agreement, to engage with the new policing service and to make sure that that policing service is representative of the whole of society and of the whole of the community. Policing is at its best and is most effective and most efficient when it reflects the society it serves. So my plea would be to engage with that new process, become involved in those new institutions of government, and become involved in the new policing service. Policing by its nature is far too important and far too impactful on all our lives to be left to the police alone.
We've learned a lot, especially on the participation of women. We have learned that women could also participate, especially in the policing. Women could serve as a police, of course, police officers, because there were cases that only women could understand, especially the cases on the violence to women. So in that case, we have learned that through participation of the women, we may be able to address all those problems regarding the women.
We are happy that Mr. Peter Sheridan is have with us to witness and to have a pulse on the framework agreement. We have conducted a meeting with them and very successful. So we believe that the experiences of the country will also be compared what is now going on in our country for the peace process to be signed on.
It was a wonderful, enlightening experience for me in that I learned plenty. I experienced a lot of things which I had not experienced yet when I was in the service. I learned a lot from my talks with people like the sons and daughters of warriors, the Muslim Christian communities in Lanao and Iligan, which gave me a much better perspective of the challenges and the road ahead for our framework peace agreement. Among other things, I also learned from Peter Sheridan about the peace process in Ireland and what we can learn and bring with us to the table in our own MLF peace process. So many things which I experienced, which I would not have experienced.
You have to actively engage in and be part of it. It is your peace process. It doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to the MILF.
Probably the most important take-home message that I got was right across the board was a yearning for peace. It doesn't matter whether I spoke to police officers, to soldiers, to people in Bangsamoro, and I think that's the greatest hope that you have here. If there's any parallel that I take from the Northern Ireland process, it was a yearning for peace. It is more about how we learn to live together as citizens and how we have human dignity for every member of society.
Thank you.